Okay, we're going to take a look at this section here with, let's simplify this fraction. Well, the first thing I notice right away, whenever I see an n squared plus so many n's plus a number, I'm like, hey, that's going to factor. What's it going to break down to? Well, if we break down the top part, I'm going to assume we remember. I'll just do this one part. 1 and 10, 2 and 5, and what's going to add together to give us that 7, the 2 and the 5. So we know the top is breaking down to an n plus 2 times an n plus 5, all divided by an n plus 2. Now, notice that this piece and this piece are going to be exactly the same. If n is 10, 10 plus 2 is 12, and 10 plus 2 is 12. The 12s would cancel out and give you 1s, wouldn't they? So they're going to cancel out here. So we're like, hey, well, this entire piece right here is nothing more than n plus 5. And what would you rather plug in? Let's say n is 38. Would you rather plug 38 into n up here or go, oh, 38 plus 5 is 43? The answer will be 43 guaranteed. You would much rather this. That's simplified. Wow, that's so much easier if I got to plug in. However, we got to be very careful because notice when you cross these n plus 2's out, they sort of disappeared. But notice that in the normal problem, that n could not be a negative 2 because you would have negative 2 plus 2, which is 0, and you cannot divide by 0. So even though this simplifies to n plus 5, we have to make a note to the side saying, hey, you can plug n in as long as n is never a negative 2. Because you and I crossed it out right here and we sort of made it disappear, but we have to keep that restriction that n can't be a negative 2. So we must make this statement right here of n not being able to equal negative 2. That's half the problem, making sure you put the restriction there. Let's look at the second one. Well, if we factor this down, it breaks down to an n plus 1 times an n plus 10, all divided by an n plus 10. And we notice, hey, they both have n plus 10s. They cross out. So we're like, this simplifies to just an n plus 1. But we cannot forget the restriction. Since we crossed this out, we made it sort of disappear. But we have to make the statement, n can't be a negative 10 because negative 10 plus 10 is 0. And 0 is one of the restrictions at the very beginning. It looks like it disappeared, but it's still there. Because if you try to plug negative 10 into this equation, you're going to get an error. But it looks like if I plug negative 10 in here, oh, I get an answer of negative 9. But you and I know negative 10 is not an option that you can plug in there. So we have to make this statement right here about the restriction. 20. What multiplies together to give you 20, yet adds together to give you 12? Looks like a 10 and a 2. Of course, the bottom fact that I have an n plus 2 right here is sort of a good indication of what we're going to probably try to have cross out. It's always a good hint. So we have n plus 2's, and we're like, hey, these n plus 2's can go away. And this entire fraction is nothing more than an n plus 10. However, we must remember the restriction. What can't n be at the very beginning? A negative 2, because negative 2 plus 2 gives me a 0. So I'm like, hey, you can't be a negative 2. So this fraction simplifies to an n plus 10 as long as n cannot be negative 2, because that will create an error in the original problem. Problem 4, well, I can see that's an n plus 1, n plus 12. When this center number is bigger than that guy, it's always an indication using the far outside numbers, 1 and 12. Over n plus 1. So the n plus 1s go hasta la vista. We're left with n plus 12, and we're like, oh, I'm done. No, you must state the fact that n in the original part can't be a negative 1. Okay, so this fraction simplifies to this n plus 12 as long as n can't be negative 1. As long as it's any other number, they're going to be the same. If n is 7, right up here, if you plug 7 into that equation, I guarantee you're going to get 19. And I would much rather do 7 plus 12 than 7 squared plus 13 times 7 plus 12 divided by 7 plus 1. Yes, of course. All right, problems 1 through 4 there for you. Hope it helped you.